Hey guys, Louis Dangoor here from GiveMeSport, joined by former WWE Champion AJ Styles. AJ, I've wanted to do this interview for a very long time.
Oh, so great.
It's a pleasure to speak to you today.
Yeah, man, thank you.
How are you looking forward to the Rumble? Obviously tomorrow night, big event.
It's a big event, man. I mean, it's the Rumble. There's a lot to get excited about. Who's going to show up? We don't know. I mean, I'd love to tell you, I honestly do not know what's going to happen. A lot of people don't believe that, but it's 100% true.
And I guess for you as well, big event. 5 years on from your debut, where you came out, I guess shocked a lot of people. How was that for you, looking back on the 5 years, obviously your Rumble debut and where you are now?
I love when people post, my debut, because it brings me back to that moment and how nervous as a 30, I think I was 37, and you wouldn't think that someone who had been working as long as I have would be nervous about something like that, but not knowing if anybody's going to know who you are, it's nerve-wracking, it's scary. Thank God it was in Orlando.
Yeah, and I guess that pop when you came out must have been huge, and must have been big for you as well. At least speaking about what you're saying, knowing that they knew who you were, and almost sounded like everyone in that building knew who you were.
Yeah, it was priceless, man. It couldn't have been any better for me. So it's definitely a moment that I'll never forget.
And looking back on then and what you've achieved now, when you were sat there coming out of the Rumble, sat backstage, did you think you would have achieved what you have done in WWE since then? So winning titles, big matches at WrestleManias, I guess main eventing WrestleMania with The Undertaker. Did you think at that moment that you would achieve what you have?
I thought that I would definitely be successful. Getting to perform with some of the guys like The Undertaker, I didn't know if that would be possible. But, you got to expect these things out of yourself. You've got to strive to be better than what most people expect. And when given the opportunity, I'm going to find a way to shine.
And I know you've spoken quite heavily about wanting matches with all of kind of WWE's legends. You spoke about wanting one with The Undertaker. That happened. Edge, I know you spoke this week, said looks like it could be happening in the future. Triple H, I know obviously with his health issues, maybe not, but again, who knows what the future holds. Who else? Is it even active or sort of not? Are you got on your wishes? And do you have, I guess, that wish list where you've got, I want them, I want them, I want them?
I think everyone has that list, and some things are just not going to be possible. Hey, listen, I was able to take the Stone Cold Stunner, when Steve Austin came back like a couple years ago. I mean, that was off the bucket list. I'll settle for something like that. It may not be the match that I wanted, but it was the moment. And I find that in my career now, I'm looking for moments rather than matches for the most part. But I'm looking forward to that match, hopefully with Edge. I mean, we're all going to have to pray about it and make sure it happens. But who is the next guy? I'm not sure. I'm looking forward to the ones I really want in the future.
And I guess speaking of the future, you're not only wanting WWE legends and I guess the stars that we all know, but you've also done some work with NXT 2.0 with Grayson Waller. How was that? And I guess for a lot of people, obviously a lot of people quite like Grayson Waller, but there was a feeling for a lot of people of, we wish that AJ would have gone to NXT 3 years ago maybe, or 4 years ago when you liked to have Johnny Gargano were there, Adam Cole. Is that something you actively tried to pursue, to do some work, obviously knowing what you could do with those talents down there?
I mean, I want to be able to help. I want to be able to spread the information that I have and the knowledge that I have to those guys. So when they, do come to the main roster, it's not a culture shock. It's not surprising to them. This is what we know. This is what we expect out of our talent. And that's what I wanted to share with those guys. And Grayson Waller, I thought he did great in the match that we had on NXT, and I was happy with it.
And one of the big things, I guess, you've got from people, particularly when I think about you, is obviously the career you've had in wrestling, the amount of knowledge you've got. But you worked with Omos recently. And I guess, did you have to think about the advice you'd give him, considering how different you two are? So was the advice you'd give him different to the advice you'd give a Grayson Waller because of the roles you guys play?
Absolutely not. It's totally different. You got Grayson Waller, who's like a normal human being, like most of us. And then you have Omos, who's a 7'4", 400-pound, strong giant. Like, he legit is a giant. It's totally different in the way that, he would do things as far as Grayson Waller and what they would do. It's different, but at the same time, there's very similar things you can work on to be better. I mean, it's hard to, unless they're standing in front of you and go, this is why he doesn't do this and he does, or this is why he does it and he doesn't. There's so many different things.
So was that a learning experience for you almost? Having to learn how to coach in a different way? Yeah,
it's definitely a learning experience because things just aren't the same for everybody as opposed to Omos. It's just totally different, and even hard for me to say, hey, this is why you don't do this, because I'm not a big guy.
Yeah.
But I remember how I would know when I wrestled those big guys how they would sell or whatnot. It's different. It's hard to explain unless there's a something that came up and you'd be like, oh, okay.
Unless it's in front of you.
Right.
I guess you've seen the image, and it's absolutely hilarious of you and Omos. I think you're in the ring, and he's outside the ring, but you're about the same height.
Yeah, he is that big, though. If he came in here today, and I hope he does, and you see him, you'll be like, that's the biggest human being I've ever seen in my life.
I think I'll break my neck if I look at him in the eye.
There was a moment where he come up and he tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and I went, oh! He is that big. He's that enormous. That's why he's such a spectacle, because of his size. I mean, but, there's also, Rey Mysterio, who you have to see to believe how small this guy is, but how amazing it is at the same time. It's two different things, but totally make them who they are.
Sure. And one final question. I've been asking people a lot about Brock Lesnar recently, because I guess people are really enjoying what he's been doing. You obviously had your match with him at Survivor Series, which I actually just spoke to Shelton about, and he said a lot of people could have, I guess, assumed that it was going to go one way, and it went a completely different way with you guys. How was it working with Brock? And were you almost impressed, like a lot of people were, with how good he is in the ring?
Listen, I think I was more impressed with how safe he was with the things that he did.
Sure.
I didn't expect someone to be so precise in what they did.
Which is impressive, because it looks so dangerously unsafe.
I agree, and that's why I was a little surprised too. I was shocked on how strong this man was. It's pretty frightening to see how strong he is. When he grabbed me by my head and threw me to my feet in the corner, I did not expect that, but I mean, watch the tape, he did it. It's pretty amazing.
And AJ, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, but before I let you go, I've got two very quick questions.
All right.
I'm not going to ask you who's going to win the men's rumble.
It's good, because I don't know.
No, I was going to say, as in who you'd want to win, because it'd be you.
Right.
Who would you like to see win the women's Royal Rumble?
Jeez, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you got to go down. Who's going to be in it? Do you know? Do we know all 30 women?
All of them.
Exactly. So how can you ask a question like that? Big fan of Charlotte Flair. I don't know why she's in it. She is the champ. Unless she wants to hold both.
Probably.
I mean, why not, right? But she's, maybe she just wants to show how dominant she really is. Maybe that's what's going on. But Mickie James is in it.
That's cool.
I love her too. So who else is going to be a part of this that we don't know? And you go, oh, I changed my mind. I want them to win it. So I think a lot of that's going to be going on.
And before I let you go, Hall of Fame coming up in April. I saw Rikishi tweet fairly recently that he'd like to see Umaga go into the Hall of Fame.
I agree.
Who is someone other than Umaga that you'd like to see go in, maybe that doesn't get the recognition? And we've seen, I guess, people from outside of WWE that have done the majority of their work elsewhere also get recognition. Is there someone maybe that you think for their commitment and I guess their dedication to wrestling as a whole that you'd like to go in, or someone from WWE's past?
That's a good question. Who would I want to see in there that isn't already there?
Yeah.
And it may be one of those things where, oh man, as soon as I leave, I'll be like, oh, I should have said this guy. It's such a good question, I don't even know. Some of these guys, I'm like, well, since we own the library, do they still get in that way? Like, does Stan Hansen?
I guess so.
You're right?
I guess so.
Like, I always was a fan of his, the stuff that he did, especially in Japan. So, is he one of those guys? That would just pop into my head. But I bet there's several other guys that you and I both haven't thought of. They really need to be in there.
I'll tell you what, the next time we speak, first question I'll ask you is, who's going to be in the Hall of Fame?
There
So
you
you've
go.
been warned this time.
All right, fair enough.
I've
That's
given you
fair.
some warning. But
Thank
man,
you.
thank you very much. Absolute pleasure.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.